Welcome to You Don't Know Ball. Today, we're going to be talking about the 4 most improved teams going into 2024. If you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know in the comments who you think is the most improved team going into this season. We're going to start out a little bit different than our last couple of videos. We're going to have an honorable mention with the Falcons. We think that they are kind of a different story than the rest of the teams on this list, but no doubt, definitely are the most improved, adding Darnell Mooney, Kirk Cousins, Rondale Moore. I think with the addition of Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, I blanked on his name. I think it is big moves, and the thing that I think would have maybe put them on this list is if they actually used a first-round pick on a player that was going to be playing this year. So I think we just wanted to include that because we understand that it'll probably be a very different season for the Falcons this year than it was, but they didn't change their roster like the rest of the teams on this list.
Yeah, no, like the reality was just getting any type of like serviceable guy in the QB room was going to be an improvement. And they went and got a Pro Bowl quarterback who's been playing hell of good football the last 3 or 4 years. So, they had to get close to sneaking on. But as you'll see with the other teams we have on this list, the other ones, they made a little bit more noise than the Falcons.
At number 4, we have the Carolina Panthers, which is so funny because this is a team where we might not see really much change in their win-loss differential. I think they may win like maybe 2, like 3 or 4 games, maybe max 5. But I think their roster was so bad last year that with the additions that they made in Derek Brown and then both of the guards that they brought in, as well as bringing in Jadeveon Clowney and Deontay Johnson, their roster is so much improved from what it was last year, Dobbs.
No, absolutely. And I want to point out as well to your point about, Clowney, say what you want about Clowney, but he's coming off of, you could really argue, second best year of his career last year. Not from necessarily a numbers perspective, but filling his gap, being that guy, sealing the edge, doing what he has to do. Jadeveon Clowney is that guy, right? Like he is going to come in and make an impact on this defense, especially when you're putting him on the same line as Derek Brown, who, like I've said in multiple videos already, Derek Brown is one of the best defenders in the whole league at this point. If you haven't woken up to Derek Brown, it's time to wake up because Derek Brown is not playing games. Derek Brown is a hell of a fucking player. And, you can really build around Derek Brown at this point on defense. Like you said, is it going to necessarily result in a big difference this year per se? Probably not, because there's still a lot of building that has to be done. But you added DJ Wanham, which was also a sneaky little addition, right? You added Troy Hill, Dane Jackson. Then you got also Xavier Woods from the Cowboys. Like, you made moves that are going to have a good impact on this team down the road, potentially even this year. But I don't know if we're going to see the wins losses like you were just saying necessarily this year. There's still a lot of building that has to be done. But all in all, especially when you add Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, like you talk about the guard situation, well, Deontay Johnson. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a roster that very much did improve. They prioritized improving, and they did their job. That's all you can do is in this league sometimes is, and that's why I say sometimes. Sometimes you're a team like the Texans that takes a giant step. Sometimes you're a team like the Panthers that's got to take baby steps. But as long as you're making steps, it's all that matters. And I certainly am not going to sit here and say the Panthers aren't making steps.
No, I think that's the biggest thing is, regardless how much you see it, like from a baseline talent perspective, they are a much better team, 100%. Moving in to number 3, we have the Tennessee Titans. I think when you add players like Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, L'Jarius Sneed, and then you draft J.C. Latham to, play next to Peter Skoronski, even though Skoronski didn't play that great last year. It was good. It was okay for a rookie, but I think teams generally thought that once they moved him to guard that he would be like an automatic hit because he was playing tackle in college. And then you add Lloyd Cushenberry. So I think you put most things in place for what is needed to see if Will Levis can be that guy. And then you upgraded on defense as well. So I think the thing with the Titans is they made the most big splashes in free agency. Like, they went out to try to get the most high-level players they could.
No, absolutely. And as I want to point out too, like I always say about the Titans when we bring them up, A big thing that nobody's really been talking about, but I think will make maybe I'm higher on this than a lot of people are, but I don't care. I'm gonna live on this take, and I hope that I get to see it shine through this year. I think when you're gonna add Tavondre Sweat right between Jeffrey Simmons and Sebastian Joseph Day, we got three men that are 6'3" plus, 300 pounds plus, just absolutely crunching the middle of this offensive line. It's going to lead to way more one-on-ones for Arden Key, way more one-on-ones for Harold Landry. All of a sudden, this D line could be one of the most productive units in the whole league. Where, and I know the consensus on Tavondre Sweat, wasn't taking it, or whatever. We don't know anything about Tavondre when it comes down to it. We only know the ill wills that he's made through the process. But if he rights those wrongs, he comes in ready about his business. Tavondre Sweat's going to be a hell of a pro football player, and not only a hell of a pro football player, but the type of football player that you can genuinely kind of revolutionize your defense around, kind of be that cornerstone of a piece on defense. So if he can be that guy that I think he can, on top of the fact that everything you said, where you brought in so many new offensive playmakers, you're moving towards now the kind of duo of Tony Pollard and, how am I blanking on my man's Tajay Spears, right? That the power, the lightning. All of a sudden, and Will Levis makes a jump. This Titans team could be the type of team where, like we said last year, I'm not going to compare them to the Texans, but kind of a Texans-esque jump where you go from being like bottom of the barrel to like competing for the playoffs. I can see the Titans being that type of team this year.
No, I agree. I think it's going to be one of those, I don't want to say boom or bust because they're really kind of in the first year of like this regime, but I do think that they're one of those teams that could surprise a lot of people like the Texans. I really do. So they're going to be a very interesting team to watch, especially with Brian Callahan being the new head coach. Moving in to number 2, we have the Houston Texans, a team we were just talking about. So, Dobbs, why do we have them at 2?
Yeah, no, exactly. If you're listening and you haven't been paying it, you haven't been up to speed on the offseason, you're sitting here like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? The Texans, the team that already was the most improved last year, is somehow the second most improved again. Well, yeah, you're hearing us right. And again, if you've been keeping up with the Texans, it should be too much of a surprise. I mean, this is the team that went out and made so many moves this offseason, right? I mean, where do I even start? You added Azeez Al-Shaair back into the D'Amico Ryans defense where he shined the most. We went and we got Danielle Hunter, which you're getting a fantastic edge rusher. You added Stephon Diggs. I mean, you added Joe Mixon. You made a lot of good moves in the draft. You made a lot of smaller moves in free agency that are still going to impact this team. The Texans went from being the team that made the jump to being the team that went all in. And that's exactly why that they are now officially, in my opinion and your opinion, the team that you could argue is they made the second most improvement, with the number 1 to still be determined. No spoilers. But I think the Texans, as much as they improved last year, they arguably improved on paper more this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Danielle Hunter, all the guys you touched on. And then they added the players in the draft. I know they didn't really have like a first because they traded back with the Vikings. But at the end of the day, like, the Texans added the most hot, like, Stephon Diggs and Danielle Hunter, like, crazy additions. Crazy. And then I think a lot of people are underrating, like, the Joe Mixon ad. Like, Joe Mixon is not a scrub whatsoever. Like, he is productive and will be productive. I mean, you saw how productive Devin Singletary was last year in this Texans offense. If you don't think Joe Mixon can't replicate that or be a better back in this system, I just don't know what to tell you. So the Texans literally made themselves from a wild card team to a Super Bowl contender in one offseason. Like, they weren't even supposed to be a wild card team last year.
Well, exactly. I think that's what shoots them into this number 2 stratosphere, is when you go from being a competitive team to like, oh yeah, they like very well could win the Super Bowl. There's not a lot of teams that do that every year. You have got to be one of the top 3 teams. And in this case, the Texans rounded out to number 2.
Moving in to our final team, we have the Chicago Bears. Adding Keenan Allen, adding Romo Dunze, adding Caleb Williams, adding Kevin Byard. I think like that is just alone, because we talk about quarterback so much in terms of how much it can elevate the floor and ceiling of a team. when you look at those additions alone, yes, you could make the argument, oh, Caleb's a rookie. You don't know what you're getting from him. I'm willing to bet you are going to get more than you ever got out of Justin Fields from a quarterback perspective. So, with that being said, adding 2 high-level players at the wide receiver position, hopefully Rome is that high-level player, but, I mean, is there a better wide receiver core in the NFL?
Well, that's the thing. Really, at this point, no. And also, shouts to my man's DeAndre Swift over here. You guys got to, and again, you got Roshan Johnson. You guys got you got a loaded backs room. Again, Jalen Johnson now is the best. And this is not, it's not like it's in addition, but Jalen Johnson now the best corner in football really at this point. And with all the young guys around him improving, making those leaps, Kyler Gordon, I'm blanking on my man's over here, Tyreek Stevenson. I think you're at a point now, and if Montez Sweat can have that same year he had last year, and any of these guys can make a jump, right? DeMarcus Walker, any of these other guys can just find their way. Javon Dexter can play how we've seen flashes, but not the consistency we want to see. But they're all young guys. And if all the young guys can even make somewhat of a jump this year on top of what we expect from this offense and Caleb Williams, I mean, there was no way that the Bears wouldn't be my number one team. And I knew you were going to be thinking the same. We didn't have to, I literally didn't have to verbalize it to you. I knew we were going to have the same 2 teams for number one, because if you're being objective about it, the Bears really, I mean, they kind of, in a sense, redirected the entire franchise this offseason. And when you do something like that, you've got to be the most improved team.
It was between the Texans and the Bears for me. I mean, I think the Texans made more high level, impact now players. But I think in terms of what Caleb can be, what Rome can be, what Keenan Allen is, what DeAndre Swift is, even what Gerald Everett is, and Kevin Byard is, none of these players are scrubs. And the Bears went from missing the playoffs at 7-10 to potentially making a playoff run this year. But we'll see. And we forget they added Shane Waldron. They upgraded their OC as well. And their DC, who they basically didn't have half the season because he got fired. So it's going to be a very, very fun year for the Chicago Bears. Well,
a fun and brand new Chicago Bears.
Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like. Let us know in the comments who you think is the most improved team going into 2024. Have a great rest of your night.